You're on.
Okay, welcome to the May 2nd meeting of the Yarmouth Energy Committee. We have a short agenda today. I think we're all still exhausted from last week's 5-hour town meeting. But it's nice to see a quorum and also a member of the public. Josh, would you like to reintroduce yourself for the record? We know you, but our viewers may not.
Yeah, so my name is Josh, and I'm definitely.
Okay, and you are coming to us from Connecticut, right?
The Solar Wolf bankruptcy thing. And yes, I come to you from the great state of Connecticut, as things that Yarmouth is concerned with has impacted me in some interesting ways, but I'm glad I've met a lot of friends along the way.
Oh, good. Well, listen, we'd like to hear a little more about the current state of things with your Solar Wolf situation when we get to the Solarize Plus part on the agenda. If you have a few minutes to talk about it. Okay, Josh is our only member of the public. Now we move to approval of minutes. Thinking here of the ones for April rather than February. Everybody satisfied with both months of minutes?
Well, we've already approved the February minutes, so.
I'll make a motion to approve the April minutes as written.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, abstentions? It's unanimous. Okay, I don't see Amanda with us.
Yes,
Yes.
Oh, Amanda, I'm sorry, I'm not seeing your Hollywood Square. Well, Amanda, then we would love to hear from you how things are going with the town, and whether any of the decisions at town meeting impact energy use and renewable energy, and of course your take on many other things like EV charging and the wonderful energy set up at the new school that opens and has an open house on Saturday.
Yeah, so I have an update with the solar for the senior center, which has been postponed many times at this point. So they do have a date to finally do the roof work, which will be the end of April. Well, it's end of April's over. So now it'll be the beginning of May. And then they'll be coming back. We're trying to, now that they waited so long, we have had an approval as part of the capital budget to re-shingle the senior center, one of the walls, and do trim and, some rotting damage and stuff like that. So that work was kind of at the same time, or was going to be after them completing the solar work, which would be unfortunate because as you know, you put all that equipment on the side of the building. We'd either have to work around it or they'd have to take it off. So now
yes.
At this point, we're kind of bumping them and telling them like, well, you took so long, so what's another couple months? So we're trying to expedite getting a package together for that, for it to be completed prior to them wrapping up the work and putting the equipment on the side of the building, and or consider not putting it on the building at all and putting it on like a pedestal.
So a standalone. How does the cost compare for that?
So this part of like the CVAC program. So I don't know in regards to what their capital cost would be the difference. We wouldn't know that information, but they obviously care about getting it up and running sooner than later. So if we're gonna now bump them after they've been waiting a whole year trying to get equipment in, it might be cost advantageous for them to do one way or the other. So a little bit more to be determined over the next couple months for that project. And I was thinking about the town meeting too, because I was there in person for half of it and then virtual for the other half. But I don't think there are any other matters that overlap with the Energy Committee. I'm trying to think.
Okay. Fewer pieces of plasticware and plastic bottles in a year might mean that we get less energy in Rochester, from burning it all. But we're concentrating on better energy right in town.
Exactly. Yeah.
Now, back to the senior center for just a minute, in case any of us encounter people from the senior center, and I know Bob probably is the most likely of us to do that. So you figure this combined wall building solar or combined wall and standalone solar might be finished by September, maybe?
Yeah, I would say that would be, hopefully that it would be active by then. Again, they had a couple different hurdles. They had the skylight project, which they did complete that. So at least now, we're not battling skylights versus putting the panels on the roof. And then the skylights are done. So now, because that was one thing when we met out them, was trying to coordinate both of them because we didn't want them overlapping. Obviously, access for people in parking are really important too. So identifying staging areas and working with Diane on those elements. And like the other day we mentioned they wanted to start May 15th, but the election's the next day, so it is the 15th, so bumping it until the 19th. So so like stuff like that. So now it's just kind of been working those key pieces with the senior center and the like I said, associating the parks and what the impacts would have, parking and what impacts it would have.
Sure. Well, and I'm sure they're delighted to have the skylights, because I mean that's immediate gratification from nature, and solar energy is slightly slower in coming.
Amanda, which wall is going to be reshingled? Because a lot of the walls of and parts of the back walls have been reshingled recently. I mean, when I say recently, in the last year and a half or so.
Yeah, so Robert's been kind of taking it one wall at a time. And this is the wall that faces Forest Road. So it's a blank slate. There's nothing on it right now. So that's why you wanted to tackle that one. But now we could potentially have equipment on it. So we're trying to do it ahead.
Okay, facing Forest Road, next to the director's office, or the ballroom.
Not the ballroom. Must be the director's office. It's it has no windows or anything. It's just
okay. That just faces a wooded area that's between Forest Road and the senior center.
Right. Yep.
Okay. I'll just mention at this point, because this is actually the only place really to mention it, that our new district school, which is going to be the most energy smart building in town, is having a big open house this Saturday, May 6th. So if anyone's interested, it's a great chance to walk through the whole thing and see all the bells and whistles and see how happy and energy smart the kids are going to be after a couple of years there.
Nice. And then just the last update that I had was the flashing light that's at the intersection of Great Western and High Bank had failed. So we went out to bid, and solar ended up being a better option. So we're implementing that project. And then this mini small solar project is we just went out to bid for phase 2 of the Higgins-Kroll shared use path. And as part of that, the police department was concerned about pedestrians not stopping at their entrance. So we're putting in a solar light for flashing stop sign on the shared use path that will be radar detected for vehicles that are leaving the facility, so that it will prompt people a little bit better that there's a somebody that emergent call that is coming out of the police department, and give people warning that so they don't so they stop.
Yeah, what an excellent idea, because I mean there'd be a very high likelihood that people leaving that complex would be leaving at a high speed. That's well done.
Right. Well, yeah. So we're hopeful that it works. That's always the hardest part with those pedestrian crossings, is making sure that the equipment is appropriate. They haven't quite fine-tuned it yet, so there's a lot of trial and error, but we're getting there.
Amanda, they suggested the solar, because when I was trying to do the stuff for the new school, and I was talking to traffic light people, they had basically told me the solar really doesn't work that well on Cape Cod because we don't always have the sun. So they steered me away from solar on traffic lights.
It's interesting because when I was in Barnstable, we changed over all the school zones to solar.
Yeah, and they definitely told me not to do it solar.
Weird, interesting. Yeah, no, we did like, I want to say like 6 or 7 different school zones in Barnstable and changed them all over to solar. And they seem to be working, but I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't know. We'll have to, I mean, well, obviously we keep an eye on, because the one that is important is the Great Western and High Bank. You know, that one, but it's a flashing yellow, red. So that one's important. So we'll definitely keep an eye on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I use that light a lot. My sister lives over in South Denison. I go past there a couple of times a week, and that's an important light.
Okay, well, we're going to bet on Amanda's qualifications as an engineer to figure that she made the right call on making it solar, and we wait to be affirmed on that.
Yeah, like I said, we're always, trying to, explore new things and see how they go, and ultimately we can always switch things out if we have to.
Okay,
awesome. Well, thank you guys.
Oh, well, thank you, Amanda. Have a good afternoon. And I guess you'll be tuning into town meeting tonight. So, go dine with the kids while you can.
All right. Take care. Bye.
Take care. Okay. Well, that's good news for the senior center, Bob.
Yes.
They have been waiting and waiting. Okay, Cape Light Compact update. We have our next board meeting a week from tomorrow. That's on June 10th. And I'd just like to say, if any of you want to see the latest order from the DPU, it's kind of long to get into here, but I'd be glad to send it to you by email. It's not, Cape Light Compact business rather than Energy Committee business. But I'd be glad to send it to you. If you want to say, if you want me to, anybody speak up.
I'd like it.
Okay, just came in today. Okay, Bob. Barry, you want one?
Yes.
Okay, Sandy, how about you? Or not? That's cool.
Sorry, okay. I was muted. Yes, please.
Oh, okay. So yes. Unanimous, everybody at the meeting gets it except for Josh. We won't inflict it on you, Josh. But it's of interest to Massachusetts people who are watching how the new governor and the new commissioner she appoints are starting to shape a different tack from the Department of Public Utilities on renewables. Okay, any questions about the compact? Seeing none, we'll jump into the update on Solarize plus Yarmouth. Our solar coach, Mike, isn't here because he's on a cruise until Friday. But there isn't really a whole lot of news since the big news a couple weeks ago, which was that there's been a deal reached between the Mass Clean Energy Center and SunPower to essentially fulfill the different installations for people who have made down payments on them for the balance of what they owe. And that's huge. For people, and I'm thinking of you, Sandy, who's hired someone else to complete your installation and whose installation is up and running. You don't have to worry about any of this. You just have to pursue the compensation for your loss through the Home Improvement Contractor Guarantee Fund, and then it'll balance out.
Thank you. I am still concerned about everything because I was part of this, and even though I have mine up, doesn't mean my job is done. I want to make sure that all the people that signed up have got what they need.
Yes. Yeah, I feel the same. I mean, because they trusted us, they signed up for this. So we've got to make sure that they get what they required. I just wanted to say one other thing. And that's a question. Do any of you, because Bob and Barry, you were on the volunteer committee as well, do any of you know of additional roof orders that had down payments through to Solar Wolf other than the one on West Great Western Road or the one on Long Pond Drive? I don't want us to say customer names here, but do you know of any other addresses, or if you only knew the name and wanted to tell me in the chat, that would be fine. I'm only aware of those two, and I'm aware that we're going to need particular follow-up on the two orders that include roofs, because I suspect SunPower probably doesn't consider that exactly in their portfolio. So if you think of anyone else that you know, I've been over the...
You're talking about sites where work had started.
No, on this one, I'm talking about sites where nothing happened on the property, but Solar Wolf also was going to put in the roof for them. And so their initial payments were larger because of that. Our records don't seem to have that annotated. So it's a question of going through and figuring, why is this down payment so big? Is it a roof? Is it a really big house? Or was it for a battery? But if any of you happen to know of roof people, just put it in the chat or email me later, and I'll put them on a list that I'm going to keep a special eye on.
Well, all I can say is that the two people that signed contracts with Solar Wolf that are within bomb throwing distance of my house have not taken that option to do that to me.
Bob, I can't read you. Are you saying that you're relieved, or you still have some concerns about that?
No, I'm relieved. They would have done it by now.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm doing an update this week on the exact eve of the Solar Wolf phones going dead. So we can all have a nostalgic time at that point, and I will try not to excite any Molotov cocktail interest. Well, so it looks like with Solarize plus Yarmouth, the people who don't have anything and who have made payments will be made whole. It's going to take a while, as everything in all of this has, but they'll be made whole for the balance of their payments by a combination of funding from Mass Clean Energy Center and SunPower. Now, I have questions about, the odd case here and there. We have one case of someone who has nothing on her property at all, but who paid the full amount because she thought it would be helpful to them. So in that case, that's going to be a little tricky. So I'm going to flag that one for Mass CEC attorneys to be aware of, that they have to make sure something is worked out for that person. For the people who have, and this would have been your old situation, Sandy, before you hired Blue Cell, for people who have equipment on their roofs, but it isn't yet commissioned, which is connected to the grid, Mass Clean Energy Center is going to do what they agreed to do late in 2022, which is to find people to install that. Not install it, get it inspected. In the case of ones that haven't been inspected, get it re-inspected in the one remaining case where it flunked inspection. But that was delayed by the finding that these had to be people certified by SunPower to work with SunPower panels, or it would void the warranty. But they're on that now. They're in negotiation with a local SunPower dealer right here on the Cape. And it looks like that will be taken care of by the middle of this year. So all the people who have what are essentially charming metal and silicon sculptures on their roof right now will soon have functioning energy centers. There are a few other cases that are odd, but it seems like those other cases, although they have little oddities, will come under that overarching agreement that SunPower has made with Mass Clean Energy Center. I guess our job on that for people who are part of the volunteer committee will maybe be to kind of just keep an eye on that and keep reassuring people. And we could even think of dividing up the customers and each of us having a little set of clients whose interest we watch out for. So think about that. And we can decide at a later time, possibly next meeting. But I do think we'll need some local follow-up on that and not just National SunPower and Boston Clean Energy Center.
Now, Joyce,
drop the ball on this. What you are saying is that in the end, SunPower came to play ball and is doing the right thing vis-a-vis this program.
Yes. So anyone who didn't order through Solarize and wants really good panels and really good warranties can now, without a guilty conscience, go order that good stuff from SunPower without cursing them out. I mean, they're doing the right thing by the town.
Okay.
Now, Joyce, has that definitely been all approved, or is the motion still waiting for people to overrule it or whatever? I thought they had a meeting this week or next week to approve that motion.
You mean the select people? I'm confused.
The agreement for SunPower and Mass CEC to do the work. Is that a definite?
That's a definite. Yep. They came to a preliminary agreement already, and they've SunPower even filed on that with the bankruptcy filing. So we know that that's happening.
And well, I knew that they filed, but I thought that they had a telephone call. I thought I put it in my calendar, but I didn't. According to my paperwork, I thought they had a telephone call either this Thursday or next Thursday to see if anybody objected to what was being done.
Oh, well, that's just a standard bankruptcy thing that you anything you file, you put in, and then there's a standard waiting period to see if anyone has any objections. I frankly can't imagine that any of our customers would have objections.
No, I would just think that it would be Solar Wolf that might object to some things because he's only going to get a certain amount of money from his stuff, but not that he's going to ever see it.
Yeah, I don't think Solar Wolf would, whatever the legalities are aside, have much of a leg to stand on in this. I mean, I think he's going to be facing federal charges for some of the misinformation that was his in the bankruptcy filing and in the subsequent schedule of assets. So I noticed a very different tone in the last creditors meeting where he was yes sirring and no sirring the judge, and we, were generally much more formal and respectful because it seemed like a lot of issues had been clarified and they all fell against the bankruptcy filer.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, on that, our people have been very lucky, but there's still a lot of other people in Massachusetts and looking at you, Josh, in Connecticut, who still are having problems with Solar Wolf and getting satisfaction. Josh, is anything happening with your order for panels?
So we went with a different company, one that hopefully isn't going to go away. So we went with Tesla, and they installed back in January. We powered on in February, and we've been energy independent since, which it's nice that that went through very smoothly. However, there's still a major hole in my wallet from Solar Wolf. And in order to be made whole, at least in Connecticut side of things, I need to wait for the bankruptcy proceeding to complete. And it sounds like, you know, there's been some delays, like you mentioned earlier, some assets that were not disclosed. And, you know, all that serves to drag this out longer. It seems for me, my timeline is the court proceeding needs to close, and then I can go through Connecticut's own programs to be made whole. But it doesn't sound like there's a timeline on when this court case is going to be done.
Yeah. Put it in your will to your children.
You're talking to Josh, right?
Yeah.
Josh, that was a direct, nosy financial question, but there you are. What can I do about this committee?
I know.
Well, but Connecticut does have a parallel thing for people stung by contractors. Then that's a really good thing to know. Parallel program.
There's two versions of it. One where the contractor just did shoddy work, and another one where the contractor just went bankrupt. So there's that latter route is one that I'll pursue, but this bankruptcy proceeding needs to, you know, be done. Unless as a creditor, I have all the paperwork I need. I just need the court case to be done so I can file.
Oh, good. Well, I mean, I no longer even speculate on when it might be done, but I noticed that when the next creditors meeting was scheduled for May 24th, the bankruptcy trustee seemed to be indicating that he was making it far out in time so that everything on the asset list would be in and verified. And so I would think that things will move more quickly after that. But as a human, of course, I know it gets into summer and people's vacations, and, you know, sometimes government machinery, like other machinery, moves a little slower in the summer. But I'm glad to hear that there'll be a way for you to collect the money that you paid. And I'm glad that Connecticut has that same protection for consumers. I'm a little worried about the customers in New Hampshire. They don't seem to have quite the same structure. But
yeah, it's a tax funded program here, and New Hampshire they're not really cozy with taxes.
Yeah. That must be it, Josh. Okay, well, listen, if we hear anything that will be of use to you, like if any of us get an email from the bankruptcy trustee saying, you know, this will be well done by Labor Day, or any other happy news, we will definitely pass it right along to you by email.
Yes, I would greatly appreciate it. Thank you so much for your time, everybody.
Okay, well, always nice to hear from you, Josh. We have this great cause in common, and one of these days we'll all have emerged from it successfully.
Yes, I hope so. Let's hope it all keeps moving forward and smoothly. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Bye now. Okay, any more thoughts about Solarize Plus? Okay, now we can all give a big sigh of relief that although it took years off people's lives, and there are people who have white hair who didn't used to, they will get their solar panels. Now on to town meeting. What a town meeting. So many people. I had never seen that many people at a town meeting before. Any of you have thoughts about how this might make us think about energy articles on future town meeting warrants?
I didn't get there by Zoom until late. What happened with the earlier possibly controversial ones? I guess plastic bottles was one. Did they pass or not?
Oh, those were at the end of the meeting.
Oh, okay. You mean I turned it off too soon?
Yes, Bob.
I thought the meeting was over. Everybody left after Article 18.
Oh, no, there were 17 more articles. Well, the plastic, the plastic tableware for restaurants. And then the second of the plastic articles was plastic water bottles, given that there are now watering stations and that there is recycling for soda bottles and that sort of thing. So those were, let me think, I think it was Articles 33 and 34, but they put the petitioned ones at the end. But they both did succeed, although there was a lot of discussion about them. I don't know, Barry, what did you make of the discussion, especially as we think of the possibility for this town in terms of becoming greener generally and not just in energy generation?
Oof. I mean, I've got less history here than most of you, but it seemed to me that when I saw the turnout, I didn't know whether to read it as a lot of angry taxpayers mobilized because they were worried about the sewer system. But it seemed to me, it turned out that the turnout was folks who actually wanted the town to move forward.
Yes.
Overwhelmingly. And that was interesting in terms of this issue obviously got the sewage issue got people to come out. Mm-hmm. And certainly a lot of the advanced publicity about the question, and that the town probably has a better persona when more people participate in town meeting, and the turnout would be an important issue to think about. Mm-hmm. When other important issues come in front of town meeting. Mm-hmm. The town has become maybe less skeptical or reactionary or whatever than its history may have suggested. Mm-hmm. But I'm curious what your read, Joyce, because you've been watching this close than I have for a lot longer.
Well, I was greatly encouraged. I mean, it was interesting to see that all the naysayers jumped on the two plastic articles. And I think they thought they were going to be able to carry it to defeat them. But they were the same voices who had been against the new school. Two of them were people who had been part of the lawsuit against the school district and the town of Dennis. And they were also people who had been greatly opposed to sewers in the past, because I guess ideologically they're small government people, or perhaps they like to say no to things. But those people were all there, and it didn't make a difference. I think it helped that the articles with the plastic, with a population of people at the the end hour of the meeting, that was maybe, I don't know, 15% of what had been at the meeting at the start, that they, I think, thought they'd be able to carry it because they figured that it would be skeptics, as you say, who were all there at the end. But the person who presented for Sustainable Practice, the one of two Yarmouth members of Sustainable Practice, did a wonderful job, just wonderful. And she didn't let them throw her. And she also was very good at that kind of maneuver that one does in meetings run by a moderator, where one checks in with the moderator to give a comment. And then after that first kind of permission asking, one has, if I may, Mr. Moderator, a much shorter permission path to jump in. And she was very, very good at refuting the things that were brought up about the plastic bottles. Now, I'd say that there were probably some people there in that last hour who were neutral and maybe might have gone either way. I mean, they weren't like running out to replace all things plastic. But on the other hand, the momentum of a night where people were thinking long term was a very happy one. And I think the sheer ridiculousness of some of the arguments against the plastic and the humanity and standing her ground of the young woman, Haley O'Neill, I think that made a big difference. We had ridiculous public health arguments, like one where one of the vote no on many things town meeting members had pushed back on how unsanitary it was to have personal water bottles instead of plastic water bottles, because she had read, no source given, that at the end of use, those were as dirty as toilet seats, and that lots of people didn't really wash them out at night when they brought them home and run them through their dishwasher. Well, she immediately, of course, lost the whole world of people who don't have dishwashers right there. Don't know how wide that is. But then she went on to say that she cared too much about her family's health to be bringing that home, that a personal water bottle would touch her lips, then it would touch the faucet, and it would carry away all the germs from all the lips before hers that had touched it. Then she would put the cap on and she would bring all those germs home, walk in the front door, uncap them, and let them loose in her family space. The young woman was particularly effective on that, as she explained that the watering stations installed had you put the bottle below the spout. It's nowhere near the spout. You just turn on the spout at the top and it goes down into the bottle. And then she, summarized that just so you know, in a way that suggested that she suspected this person had, just been waiting all along for the go-ahead that these were germ-free, or germ-free compared to other options, but that was really kind of drawing a line in the sand as far as how much nonsense was going to be tolerated. I thought it was an amazing exercise in democracy. People got up and condescended by saying, well, the young lady may not remember, and things like that, but it in the end didn't make a difference. It was an overwhelming vote in favor of the petitioned article on the plastic tableware. And that was clear to the moderator. But the forces of no insisted on a hand count for that. And of course, then it turned out that they had just lost by an enormous amount, even more than I would have guessed from just looking around. Then they, at a later point, insisted, I know, there was an insistence on temporarily tabling things. And in one case, confusingly, tabling this measure until a date certain, or tabling things indefinitely while still throwing around the term 2 years. So there were efforts to block these by tabling and by amending with dumb stuff, but it didn't make a difference, and they did carry. And I think the antics of calling for the 2 hand votes probably will make neutral town meeting voters who happen to be there in person for that look rather askance at the people who proposed those in subsequent town meetings. Sandy, did you get to watch it while you were out of state?
I did not. However, I do want to say I was very pleased in seeing some of the outcomes of the votes. And though I've always been at town meeting and know it can last for 2 days, I was surprised it was only the 1 day with some of the issues that were on. But I really like the way this time that the wastewater treatment situation, wastewater, I should say, not wastewater treatment, where they really used a lot of social media. As you know, I didn't have my Facebook page, but I got it back. And even though I am not signed up for Yarmouth events, a lot of it came through on my Facebook feed. So they really promoted that. And I thought it was a great way that we could do what Barry has been trying to promote, to do that same type of thing, get people to come in and give their feelings about why they want a certain thing. So it was very, very well done.
One thing that we were talking to the assistant town manager or town administrator after the meeting, and he was saying everybody had been working on this so hard and for so long. They seem to anticipate every single question or problem, you know, with even with this 2-page handout, it had them all. Like, what about for people who have an existing Title V system, but the Title V system, say, fails before their phase for sewering gets to them? What happens then? Are they going to be forced to get the whole alternative system with all the expensive maintenance? And the answer was no, and that the town health department would work with them. You know, maybe something could be worked out with more frequent emptyings, you know, and that kind of a temporary measure that would mean they wouldn't have to get an interim Title V system before the sewering got to them. And I really sensed in that paragraph, the final paragraph of that little description, it's on the bottom right corner of their beautiful 2-page handout, that with what they were talking about, individual case by case, they managed to reassure a lot of people who had invested in Title V systems and now wondered where that left them if they weren't in the first phase or two. And I assume that that stuff got communicated on the social media as well, but you've seen that and I haven't.
I didn't really see that. It was just people saying why they wanted it, etc., and thought it was the better idea and were in favor of it.
It was interesting.
Everybody else here, Sandy?
I'm sorry?
It was interesting, the discussion on next door after I posted a note that the article had passed at town meeting. I think virtually none of the people from Yarmouth had bad things to say, and a lot of people that are on our next door group from various parts of the town of Barnstable and Dennis were the ones that were complaining about government interference and all that. I think the people of Yarmouth really understood what the issues were, and it was because of the, you know, the long-term public affairs program that the town and the wastewater treatment advisory committee had undertaken.
And I thought the town staff and the town administrator and assistant town administrator did a great job in fielding questions,
yes.
Even questions, some of which were, you know, hostile questions. I thought they really managed to get even more chunks of information into their answers that might have been the average information nugget. And I think they managed to reassure people who maybe had some doubts coming into the meeting.
Jeff Colby as well.
Oh, Jeff, yes, of course. I was including him with town staff, but of course he was a star.
Yes.
Okay. Any other thoughts on town meeting? It was just, I found it a really happy thing to see that many people actively involved. And it was interesting that Stephanie Cox got permission from the moderator to give a warning that usually, and unfortunately this was down with the plastic stuff at the end of the meeting, so not heard by, you know, the missing 600, but she was delighted to see this many people come out, and she hoped they'd continue to come out because Yarmouth had a history of people appearing at the next town meeting with a mission to repeal things that had been passed at the annual town meeting, because of course fewer people go to the fall town meeting. And she really called it, because Tom Sullivan, the person who was the perpetrator of the petitioned article number 35 on removing from a bylaw passed in 2022 the town registering in-ground irrigation systems so that it would have them for future droughts and be able to turn them off if they had to, and the people themselves weren't turning them off. That person's article was the only article that failed, possibly because he kept trying to claim that it was covered by the 14th Amendment of the Constitution, and that it involved uneven application of law, not as in the case of citizenship and indentured slavery. No, that it was unfair to people who owned the in-ground water irrigation systems to be singled out as a class. So apparently, by that logic, all the non-dog owners would also have to pay for licenses for non-dogs, and people who have other specific things that they need permits for that are a minority of residents. Everybody should be involved with that. I mean, it was kind of a goofy argument, but anyway, he was so mad after his did not pass, and the young ladies that he had argued so strongly and repeatedly against with the plastic articles, her presentations, he went up to her and said that, don't worry, I'll be back and we'll be repealing these in the fall before they even take effect. So that was my one caveat, that, we have to make sure that for anything new, for anything that people have to think about, we do have to aim, as Barry was saying, for high turnout. Okay, if we don't have anything else to add on the town meeting, we might want to move on to the Mass Municipal Opt-in Specialized Stretch Code, and just a little bit of background on where that has passed on the Cape now that most of the town meetings are over. So I'll turn the discussion over to Barry on that, because Barry, you're our source of knowledge on this, and I understand there's been very good news on the Outer Cape.
Yeah, so I have a few updates. It only was presented to the annual meetings in Wellfleet and Truro, and I actually talked today with Bob Higgins-Steele from the Truro Energy Committee and Dave Mead Fox from the Wellfleet Committee, who were the lead presenters in each town. And it passed overwhelmingly in Truro and by a substantial margin in Wellfleet. In Truro, they had the unanimous support of the Select Board and the Finance Committee, but were taken by surprise. They found out a couple of hours before the meeting that both the Select Board and the Finance Committee were asking to postpone the issue. I think somebody in the Finance Committee had panicked that a big DPW project that they were in the process of moving forward on would be much more expensive because of the specialized code. And the chair, the guy from the Finance Committee, said this is fiscally irresponsible. And Bob was able to explain that, in fact, whatever additional costs were imposed by the code changes were all in the updated Green Community Code. That's already in force in all the green community towns, including Truro. That wasn't optional. And those are all the requirements for a much tighter building envelope, better insulation, better windows, fewer air leaks, designed essentially to radically reduce the amount of energy that's needed to heat and cool the building. But that wasn't part of the opt-in code. The only thing the opt-in code changed was that it would need to be powered by electricity rather than fossil fuel, or else there would be more complicated requirements. And they had planned for an all-electric building because the Outer Cape doesn't have natural gas, and oil heating is incredibly inefficient. So the resistance melted, and in addition, there was a Truro resident who was actually building a passive house in Wellfleet because he couldn't afford any land in Truro. But he got up and made an eloquent presentation, apparently, about how much both better the house was going to be and how much less expensive it was going to be to build it because of all of the subsidies the state provides for all electric building. And but that was compelling to the voters. And in any event, there was no significant opposition. No builders showed up to push back, and it passed overwhelmingly. In Wellfleet, they also had select board and finance committee support. There was a couple of what David described as sort of unhinged arguments that didn't.
I thought those only happened in our town.
No, I think every town meeting has a couple of those. And opposition from the bylaw committee, which
a bylaw committee
actually gone through, but which I guess comments on all bylaws in Wellfleet. And then it got held up by a quorum call, which they lacked a quorum, so they had to take a half-hour break and call all their friends to get them to come back because they'd run out of voters. And they did manage to refill the room. And one select board member, in the course of when they got back, argued for postponement because he felt that this was just too complicated and they should just take more time.
But
that the postponement was defeated and it passed.
Great.
There are some other towns that are working on getting it to their fall town meetings. I know that the energy committees in and climate committees in Eastham and Orleans are working on that. In Chatham, the energy committee is working on it, but they don't generally have fall town meetings in Chatham, so it'll probably be for next spring. And in most of the other towns, I think it is still at a fairly early stage of figuring out strategies. And we expect that a number of other towns are going to try to move forward in the fall, but it's still at an early stage of organizing it. The regional meeting that we had planned to have on May 1st we postponed it basically because we could figure out 4 towns were having town meetings Monday night. So it was a bad timing, but more importantly, Judith Holt from Sandwich, who is a terrific designer of green homes, has been working with a lot of the area churches on making their buildings more energy efficient, made the case that we should be working as hard on retrofitting existing buildings since most of the building stock is already built, and that and a lot of that got a really positive reaction from everybody who's involved in the effort. And so we are working on reframing the campaign to deal both with existing buildings mostly on retrofitting for better energy efficiency and new buildings through the specialized code. And so over the next couple of weeks, we're going to try to flesh that plan out and reconvene the regional meeting. The only other update is I just actually, as this meeting was beginning, got an email from Mary Wagon, who's the affordable housing staff in town, inviting us to present the specialized code issue to the housing committee next week on Monday the 8th, and said to extend the invitation to anyone on the energy committee who'd like to sit in for that, and I'll transmit the email. It's a Zoom meeting, and I figure I'll offer the same presentation that I gave the energy committee last month. But Mary herself was very supportive. Had the view that affordable housing should be energy efficient, and that Yarmouth's always worked towards that in the projects that Yarmouth supports. And thought the housing committee would be interested in. So that's kind of the most immediate next step. But now the town meeting's done, we need to plan the approach to the town staff and the select board, and begin setting up those meetings.
And it'll be a good opportunity in terms of morale, because I'll tell you, if the sewers had failed, the whole wastewater plan, a lot of them would have been thrown back on working on that again, like from some new angle. So there should be high morale to propose things like this, within a month of this town meeting.
And actually, the other thing that came up today from Bob Higgins Steel is that their energy committee is figuring their next step is to work on educating the select board and the town administration about the state's clean energy and climate plan, which I hadn't really focused on previously, but I downloaded today and sent it the members of the committee copies. It is a very detailed, extensive plan on how the state transitions towards net zero. And there is one plan for 2025 and 2030, and then another plan for 2050. But the legislation, the Climate Roadmap Act, required that the state create a plan every 5 years for the steps that it would take in those windows to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And it's actually a pretty important set of documents, because it, among other things, lays out that the plan is to phase out natural gas almost entirely for home heating, to begin decommissioning the transmission system, so that by 2050, when we're supposed to be at net zero, natural gas just won't be available to heat homes. And with respect to the specialized code, it struck me, boy, I mean, the notion of building a new building now to be heated by a fuel that's not actually intended to be in use 20 years after the building's built, it's a no-brainer that it makes sense.
But Larry, do you really think the gas companies are going to see in 25 years the elimination of LNG as a fuel source in this state?
Well, it doesn't eliminate it entirely. I think the plan envisions that for some industrial uses where carbon can be captured and sequestered, that's compatible with net zero, because the net in net zero is we don't emit any more carbon than we can remove from the air. so that there are some uses where you could still use natural gas and not reach the net zero objective. You're just not going to be able to capture carbon at the level of the individual household. I mean, they're not going to put carbon capture devices on every chimney. So,
as an irrelevant aside, every time you start discussing this, I have this mental image of President Nixon and President Carter shivering in the White House with their sweaters on, because in the mid-70s, I had a Washington assignment, and my job was it was called Energy Advisor, and my job was to tell the policy people at the Voice of America and our press service and others what U.S. energy policy was. And so I had to do all of these crazy things and try and figure that out, and then explain it in layman's terms to these policy people. And of course, we were in the follow-up to the first oil shock, the OPEC 1973-74 boycott. And there was all this talk about energy conservation and housing and everything like that. Exactly 50 years later, we still haven't got it.
And you know, the clean energy and climate plans are extremely ambitious. They get that a lot of what needs to be done isn't in place yet. There's talking about things like changing the utility rate structure so that there is a lower electric rate for heat pumps and EV chargers, because currently, if you've got a natural gas furnace, it is cheaper to heat the house with natural gas than with electricity for a heat pump, because there's a pricing mispricing for the policy goal, and they're working on getting at the structural issues that will make it difficult to do the transformation that they plan for.
You're exactly right, because on a personal level, that's exactly what I am struggling with right now.
I had in fact just done the calculation yesterday for myself, and Mass Save has a convenient calculator. We can see whether you're going to save money or lose money by replacing the furnace with a heat pump. It's easy if you're judging against an oil tank, but natural gas is priced really cheap now relative to electricity, and they need to change that. They need to improve the subsidies for heat pumps, and that's all in the plan.
Back in the day when this neighborhood of Yarmouth was gasified, the gas companies just gave away the furnaces for almost nothing, because they knew they were going to make a lot of money over the years on the gas itself. It's sort of like HP inkjet printers.
Yeah.
Barry, do you have any idea how soon things like the differential electric rates for the heat pumps and EV charging might happen?
I just began reading this plan today, so
okay.
I haven't got it all memorized. There are dates in the plan as to which year they think each of these pieces is going to be in place. And I assume the new administration this plan was written during the Baker administration. I assume the Healy administration is going to be more committed to actually making it happen. And since the DPU has always been one of the main obstacles, in the whole arena of renewable energy, I'm assuming the change in the DPU is going to be, a dramatic upgrade. but some of it's really complicated. So it's not gonna be instant.
Yeah. Yeah. And I can't even imagine the number of DPU procedures it would be necessary for all the parties to go through, you know, for investor-owned utilities plus the Cape Light Compact for the differential electric rate with all sorts of outside groups weighing in on those. I mean, it is a complicated process, but that seems like a wonderful idea.
Right. No, it's something I talked to Maggie Downey about it, and to Dorothy Savarese, who was on this the Governor's Clean Heat Commission, and had assumed this was a pie in the sky idea because it seemed both obviously essential to achieve the electrification goals, but I didn't actually believe it was a practical suggestion, and it's in the plan now. The state's official plan as to how do they achieve the objectives that the legislature assigned them in the 2021 Climate Roadmap Act.
Do you think it was especially helpful that they could see that the Canadian hydro energy would be coming down through Maine on a pipeline? I mean, I felt very bad about voters being overruled, but that did seem like a very good energy planning decision when that happened.
I don't know the answer.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I don't know how long the pipeline will take, but it seemed like it had been planned and ready until last year's referendum. So I'm imagining they probably can get going on that pretty soon. Any other questions for Barry? Barry, thank you so much for having all these conversations with all these people, you know, to keep yourself and then, you know, because of your sharing, all of us more up to date on this.
The question I have is Barry's goal, and this is for us to start talking about what we're going to do ourselves in this, and should we start talking about that today or leave it till next month? I you know, it's really an important issue. I mean, an important role which I think we can play. At the same time, it's I think complex, the kinds of things that we have to do.
Bob, you have an older house, right? What was your...
No, 1968.
Oh, okay. I was just wondering if your house would make a good case study.
Well, I mean, its heating history is it had an oil furnace put in initially. And then when National Grid was gasifying, they offered my mother a furnace for $500 or something like that, and then she was never billed for it, and that
better and better.
and we've been using that furnace ever since. Nobody has ever said we should change it. I did have a big bill this winter. Some of the thermostats went thing. I mean, we've been replacing bits and pieces of it over the years. And my looking at air source heat pumps is more because we don't have any air conditioning in the house, is more for air conditioning. Oh, we do have one room that's electric resistance heating. It was a garage, it converted it into a dining room at the time when electricity was very, very cheap and electric resistance heating was all the rage. There were a couple of other houses on this street that were built at about that same time that wound up with that kind of heating, including our next door neighbor, who is a Solarized Yarmouth client, and one of the intermediate owners of that house, because in the 50 years we've owned this house, that house has had 5 owners, changed it from electric to gas hot water heating. So now I guess the Sharps are going to, eventually go back to heat pumps, or go to heat pumps with a solar system on the roof. But
one of the tidbits that I picked up in the climate plan today was that the state's inclined to support, as part of the transitional stage, hybrid systems in which specifically people who want to add central air don't have anything in place now, could add a smaller heat pump, something that's sufficient to produce the air conditioning, but couldn't heat the whole house, but could be used as supplemental heat in the winter to reduce the amount of fossil fuel burning needed, but only use it during, when it's over 30 degrees, when it's more efficient than the gas alternative. And that you don't get the same amount of subsidy, but there is some subsidy for the hybrid heat pump function.
Well, my idea is sort of a Rube Goldberg version of what you're saying. Simply because of the nature of the house and how the heating systems have been installed and changed over the years. And the idea is to get some air conditioning into 3 particular rooms, that dining room, which also would benefit from the heat aspect, and our 2 upstairs bedrooms that just get wickedly hot in the summertime, and that they would be the ones where it would be air conditioned in the summertime, but also in the wintertime would probably, because we have a 2 thermostat system, a different thermostat for the upstairs and for the ground floor. Anyway, I mean, I'm getting into the details which are particular to the house. But it would be a real Rube Goldberg situation where we would attack the particularities of the house with a variety of solutions. But back to who do we have to start really convincing in the town that we want to be serious about the stretch code, the specialized stretch code? I think of not just the select board itself, but the town administrator, assistant administrator Jeff, and maybe even Amanda, although I don't think she's a strong policy force.
Well, and I'd add Karen Green, who's head of economic and community development, and Mary Wagon, who works under Karen Green. And it seems to me that there might be some other people that we'd want to draw in, not because they were necessary, but as a kind of missionary spread the word thing, so they would feel it was theirs also. I mean, one of the oddities the other night about the plastic discussion, which of course had gone on at on the Recycling and Solid Waste Committee and had bounced around generally. Maria Marasco, a member of the Economic Development Committee, got up and gave what sounded like a just barely held in restraint expression of high dudgeon that she and her committee had not been consulted, the Economic Development Committee, and she actually suggested that the whole thing should be postponed and brought forward to her committee before that happened, because it was something that would affect Yarmouth businesses. Now, people did not decide her way on that, but I mean, it was a reminder of better to invite everybody to the party, whether they come or not, than kind of have someone feel that they were the skunk not allowed.
I mean, what I guess I'd suggest is offer to work with Joyce between now and the next meeting to sort of figure out everybody we ought to have briefed before this becomes a public discussion, and start lining them up. And it, you know, every I mean, I assume economic development, probably the planning.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Folks, I mean, I don't, you know, the town table of organization better than I do, but just make a list and offer to brief everybody.
Yeah, I think the town planner, Kathy Williams, and then Sharon, the chair of the planning committee, but also get in there early with Chris, who's their engineer, and you know, having engineers on your side who are willing to speak for things is always a help. And we did get him to speak for the stretch code back when that was up.
Also, are we going to have to get our membership back up to scruff, because we've lost Marilyn, and Mike is, for the time being, a shadow of his former self as a member.
Yes, and we really need engineers. I mean, because if we have people who can get up and talk on this, and who are members of Energy Committee, who can identify themselves as engineers. I'm thinking like Steve did back with the stretch code. Exactly. That would be a huge help. I mean, not that we decide Energy Committee on the basis of what we might be proposing, but really Energy Committee should always have at least one engineer. And while Mike is, you know, going to be partially involved in duty elsewhere, I think we've really got to find an engineer. I've been snooping around a little bit with alumni organizations to see who might have track of some engineers who would also live in Yarmouth. And I haven't turned up any yet, but I'm still going to work on it. I came across a couple people who were decades retired, and it seemed like maybe we would want someone who would last as a committee member longer, and who also would be able to speak to newer technologies. So I've been looking for somebody whose degree is, say, in the last 25 years. So if you meet any engineers anywhere, like the farmer's market or the cinema, you know, chat them up, get their info.
We put a notice in the senior center's bi-monthly newsletter, if we get any things.
Oh, that's a good idea. Yeah, we've got a notice in the you know, the electronic revolving bulletin board that at the town that points out where things are needed, and it sometimes appears on your television on Channel 18. But it never occurred to me to solicit separately through the senior center letter, but that would be great.
Okay, let me figure something out there. I haven't talked to Lisa in a long time. I'll give her a call.
Okay. That'd be good. I'm not even sure who works there anymore. So I mean, it's been, the pandemic just was such an interruption of all things.
Where, at the senior center?
Yeah.
Well, the only major change, of course, is
oh, well, Kathy Bailey leaving, of course.
Yeah, with Kathy Bailey, but that's what, 3 years ago. That was before the pandemic.
It was just interesting that in January and February, I was trying to reach Lisa and was unable to. So I think she was on some kind of leave.
Yeah, I haven't talked to her in almost a year because I've been absent myself for a long time from, I mean, I don't play cards there anymore. A lot of things I don't do that I used to.
And I was I was looking at the website today too. The milestone is not up to date on the website, so that it goes March, April. So May, June is not even up, which should have been up already. So I hope Lisa is okay.
Yeah.
Didn't we just get an email a couple of days ago?
I don't get that email anymore. Ever since they took me off of the website, I don't get it. But I did look it up online. I always like to keep up on it, just to see activities. If you have one, send it to me, please.
Okay.
Okay, and that leads us rather logically into our final item, which is the whole question of member announcements, suggestions for future agenda items. Any contributions there?
I guess I'd throw out that what I mentioned earlier, that we should probably talk about the Clean Energy and Climate Plan. And I guess I'd offer to try to digest at least the 2025-2030 plan and be able to outline it. I sent everybody copies today, but it's it's 127 pages for the near term plan. So
that is a lot. Well, thank you for sending the copy. I promise to read the entire thing in sections before our next meeting.
The one thing that liberal tree huggers are not conservative about is the number of words they use.
Well, they were thinking only electronic communication, so they figured as long as they had their solar panels on the roof, they were sending it out in a green way.
But I don't know about you guys, but I prefer to read a piece of paper than a computer screen.
Oh yeah, much easier on the eyes.
Yeah, I'm not a big Kindle person, for instance.
Well, Barry, would you be willing to present on that at the next meeting, and we would all take it as homework to slug our way through it?
Yeah, I'll try to at least be able to sort of outline the key points, but I said I haven't read it yet, so if I can, I will do that. Yes.
Okay. Well, that'll give you a month. You read fast, I know you do.
Joyce, are we going to have CVEC present?
At some point, I think we should have CVEC present. I might let Maria Marasco cool down a little from being upset about not having her in-town Economic Development Committee consulted on the plastic stuff. Maybe not next meeting, but we could think of it midsummer if you want, like maybe July.
Okay, I was just asking since we had gotten the email.
Yeah, we might want to think of, you know how Steve used to give us a heads up. Amanda does that a little, but we might want to schedule something that had both Amanda and Maria, but also given the last time that Maria came to an energy committee meeting, like give a very firm time limit.
Mm-hmm. Sounds good.
Yeah.
To me.
Did you ever come to our meeting? I must have been absent because I don't remember ever even meeting her.
That was in an in-house at the town hall.
Yeah, that's how long ago it was. She was, it was shortly after Steve Gavin's death, because she got in touch with me and wanted to be on the agenda because she was angry that in the way that the agenda was set up, it said CVEC no report, CVEC no report, because of course, you know, Steve had died. And so she came and gave a report, but a lot of it was a lot of it was kind of self-serving. It wasn't really a lot on renewable energy. A lot of it was how she was saving CVEC from itself.
How?
Yeah.
This is crazy. I'd never even met the woman, and you used exactly the words that I would have used to describe her.
Well, there you go. See how deeply compatible we are on Energy Committee? Doesn't that make you think we should do a diversity inclusion thing right there if we all read minds too easily in the same direction?
Oh dear.
Recorded, remember?
Yes. Okay. Thank you for that. Thank you for that, Barry. Good point. Do we have anything else we want to mention for the future here?
Well, for the present, I have finally gotten around to starting to get in touch with people about EV chargers in public places, commercial public places, like strip mall parking lots and supermarket parking lots and hotel parking lots and things like that. I got calls in to the 2 chambers of commerce, but have not had responses yet.
Well, I mean, you know, we could think for the future of, and obviously all these businesses are flat out in the summer, but if we got the chambers involved, it wouldn't be that hard to have a whole program with somebody from Eversource explaining the EV chargers technically, but also giving an indication of how they were willing to subsidize, and then also have somebody, probably somebody local that we already know, give a summary of the state incentives for EV chargers.
I'm thinking in particular about motels.
Oh, that would be great.
Is there a motel owners association in Yarmouth, or is there a Cape-wide one?
There's a Cape-wide one. I don't think there's a separate one in Yarmouth, but you know who would know would be the Cape-wide Chamber of Commerce over on Patty Page Way.
Yeah, I've got to call in to somebody there. I've forgotten the name. It's on another piece of paper that I don't have in front of me. I went to her voicemail and I asked her to call me back, and now you're saying it, I assume that may be one of the things that she gives me immediately is the name of the contact person at that association.
Yeah. I would suggest with them that it's always helpful to email, unless it's a really simple question, in which case I just drop by, because my impression is that the phone traffic is pretty busy. So I'd say simple question, drop in, and the nice guy who's out at the front desk will find out from whoever needs be. And then for complicated questions, figure the most relevant person and email them directly.
Yeah. You're right about leaving voicemails. I've had that happen 3 or 4 times in the last couple of weeks, of leaving voicemails with requests for callbacks and never gotten a call back.
Yeah.
There's no more customer service, unfortunately.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, the one thing about EV chargers that I thought was very, I found it disturbing. As you know, I drove to Florida. So I drove down and I drove back. And I found it kind of frightening that there weren't very many EV chargers on the way in any of these rest areas. How do you find your EV chargers, Barry, as you travel like that?
I've learned that if I'm traveling a long distance, I plan in advance. And there are both. Sometimes I just use Google Maps. You can search EV chargers,
Okay.
and I think they're fairly up to date and will locate charges of all the networks. But I also have the apps for the 3 main commercial charging networks, and you can search the apps for where the chargers are on your route. They're often not at on the highways themselves in the rest areas. Some, beginning to pass. Sometimes some rest areas on the route, say between here and New York City, have chargers, and some don't.
Yeah.
But there's usually chargers just off the highway.
Okay. I know that Buc-ee's in South Carolina is loaded with them. That was one of the new stations. And I did see that many of the rest areas are closed on the way. So they are renovating, and I'm assuming that once they renovate, they will add the EV chargers.
But I find I'm usually looking for a charger that's next to an interesting restaurant, because even at a fast charger, it takes a lunch stop to kill the time, and there's no reason to sit in the car.
There's not very many good restaurants on the way down either. I'll tell you one thing, I'm not going to McDonald's ever again.
You gotta look for good grits.
I know.
Well, that's
my parents, when they used to go to Florida, they would have, it was the early days of McDonald's open for breakfast, and they would get the McDonald's egg McMuffin, and they would split, and in those days you could get a plain English muffin toasted, and they would get one egg McMuffin and one plain toasted muffin, and one would get the egg and the other one would get the slice of Canadian bacon for their, and that was their breakfast, along with a glass of orange juice and a cup of coffee.
So dear colleagues, I have a Cape Cod Sierra Club meeting at 7, so may I move to adjourn?
You may. And anyone who wants to attend Board of Selectmen, that just started.
Right.
Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay,
Aye.
well, great to see you all. We are adjourned. Have a lovely May and a Memorial Day, and see you all in June.
All righty, thank you.
Take care. Thanks for running the meeting, Sandy, as always.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.